Why was an uneducated trapper with a single axe able to build more reliably than a modern architect with a degree in computer calculations? We are used to thinking that technology makes our lives safer and that modern materials surpass everything that nature has created. Looking at the crooked frame houses after heavy snowfalls, we rarely think about how people survived in an era when snowdrifts reached the roofs. The log cabins of the pioneers of the Wild West stood for centuries, resisting winds that today tear the roofs off elite cottages. The secret to their strength lies not in magic or luck, but in the lost knowledge of wood physics. Watch the video to the end, and you'll learn how one simple mistake in cutting a log can turn your home into a death trap during a blizzard. What if I told you that everything you believed about nails and staples is not true? The main secret to the stability of frontier log cabins was the complete absence of rigid metal fasteners in the corners of the house. The pioneers used a system of corner locks that worked completely differently from modern fasteners. The most reliable was considered to be the dovetail lock, or its simpler variation, the saddle joint. This method required not so much strength from the builder as a keen eye and an understanding of geometry. The essence of the method was to create a connection that only became stronger under load. When tons of snow pressed down on the roof, the logs in the lock compressed even more. The vector of gravity worked to compact the structure, literally pressing one log into another. Modern builders often try to fix the wood tightly with huge bolts. This creates an illusion of strength that disappears at the first serious deformation. Wood is a living material that changes its volume depending on humidity and temperature. When a log dries out, its diameter decreases and the rigid metal fastening begins to rattle. In an old log house, the drying of the log only caused it to sink lower into the lock bowl under its own weight. The walls of the house constantly breathed, but never lost their monolithic integrity. It was a self-regulating system, ingenious in its simplicity. Frontier craftsmen knew that any gap in the corner was a gateway for the icy wind. Therefore, the geometry of the cut was calculated so that water would flow out, not into the joint. An incorrect angle of inclination in the lock led to the corner rotting in just a couple of seasons. Trappers checked the quality of the cut very simply. A knife blade should not be able to pass through the lock. If the knife passed through, the log was rejected or redone. Modern log houses made of rounded logs are often assembled like a construction set, forgetting about the individual characteristics of each log. Old craftsmen adjusted each log individually, taking into account its curvature and knots. This created a unique wall pattern where each element supported the neighboring one. Such a structure worked as a single organism, distributing the load over the entire area. We are very interested in hearing your point of view. What do you think about why we have lost these simple construction techniques? Write about it in the comments. Are you ready to learn the truth about why windows crack in modern wooden houses? The second critical factor that frontier builders took into account was the enormous shrinkage of log structures. Freshly cut wood contains a huge amount of moisture, which evaporates over the years. As it dries, a 3-meter-high wall can settle by 15 to 20 centimeters. Pioneers knew this and built with the inevitable downward movement of the walls in mind. The main mistake of modern builders is trying to stop this process or ignore it. They insert window and door frames rigidly, without the necessary gaps at the top. When the log house begins to settle, the upper log of the opening presses down on the rigid frame with all its weight. At best, this results in doors that no longer open. At worst, the double-glazed windows burst and the logs themselves hang on the frames, forming gaps. In the Wild West, a special shrinkage gap was left above each door and window. This was an empty space several inches high, filled with soft moss or tow. As the logs dried and settled, this gap decreased, but the pressure was not transferred to the frame. The walls slid down around the window and door frames without destroying them. In addition, special sliding bars called casings were inserted into the structure. They prevented the logs from falling out of the wall plane, but did not prevent them from moving vertically. This allowed the house to maintain its geometry, even with the strongest movements of the ground or wood. No nails piercing through the wall were used in these joints. Modern technologies offer metal pins with spring-loaded shrinkage compensators, but metal inside wood creates a cold bridge on which condensation forms. Water inside the wall causes rot hidden from the homeowner's eyes. The old methods did not have this drawback, as they used only wood and natural insulation. Shrinkage was not a problem, but an ally of the builder if used correctly. As they settled, the logs pressed more tightly against each other, closing the smallest gaps from the wind. The house seemed to shrink into a lump to retain heat, like a person in the cold. This natural movement made the walls virtually airtight without any sealants. But walls are only half the protection, because the roof always takes the brunt of the elements. In the next chapter, you will learn how the pioneers calculated angles so that tons of snow would not bury them alive. What if I showed you a time machine that would take us to the roof of an 1850s cabin? The roof construction on the frontier was fundamentally different from modern lightweight truss systems. Today, roofs are built from thin boards fastened with metal plates, counting on the snow to slide off. But in severe frost, the snow freezes, accumulates, and breaks the lightweight trusses like matchsticks. The pioneers used a rafter construction, which was much more massive and reliable. The rafter roof rested on powerful horizontal logs. Rafters, cut into the gables of the house. These logs ran parallel to the ridge and bore the entire weight of the roof in snow. The load was distributed evenly along the entire length of the walls, rather than at specific points, as in a rafter system. Even if one log cracked, the roof did not collapse as the adjacent slabs supported the weight. The angle of the roof was chosen not for aesthetic reasons, but based on the climate of the region. In the snowy areas of the Rocky Mountains, roofs were made more sloping so that snow would lie on them like a cap. This snow served as additional insulation, preserving precious heat inside the hut. Steep roofs were built in areas with heavy rainfall, so that water would run off quickly. The roofing material also played a huge role in the stability of the structure. Often shingles were used, thin wooden plates split by hand along the grain. Such a roof was light, but when wet, the plates swelled and closed tightly. This created a sealed shell, which began to allow air to pass through again when it dried. In steppe regions, where trees were scarce, turf roofs with earth were used. This was an incredibly heavy structure that required powerful load-bearing beams. The weight of such a roof could reach several tons, which pressed the log house firmly to the ground. No hurricane-force wind could tear off such a roof, unlike lightweight metal roofing. Turf was also an excellent insulator, dampening wind noise and retaining heat. However, such a roof required constant maintenance and replenishment of soil. Modern membrane roofs are lightweight and technologically advanced, but they provide no thermal inertia. In winter, it is cold under such a roof, and in summer, it is unbearably hot without air conditioning. Like this if you are surprised by how simple solutions can be more effective than complex technologies. In the next chapter, we will talk about why wood itself was different back then. Want to know a secret that will change your perception of wood? Modern log houses are often built from so-called ship timber, which is actually grown on plantations. These trees grow very quickly, reaching marketable size in 30 to 40 years. Due to their rapid growth, their annual rings are wide, and the wood is loose and soft, like a sponge. Pioneers, on the other hand, built from relict wood that had grown in harsh conditions for centuries. Trees that grew in the shade of a dense forest or on a rocky mountainside fought for their lives every day. Their annual rings are so dense that they are difficult to distinguish with the naked eye. Such wood is similar in density to bone and is incredibly resistant to decay. An axe would bounce off such a log, ringing like metal, and it was almost impossible to drive a nail into it. The high resin content in old-growth forest acted as a natural preservative, impregnating the fibers from within. Modern wood has to be treated with chemical antiseptics, which wash out after a few years. Old pine or cedar could lie in a swamp for years without rotting, retaining its load-bearing capacity. Pioneers chose trees in winter, when sap flow stopped and trunk moisture was minimal. Winter wood cracked less when drying and was less susceptible to attack by wood-boring insects. Today, forests are cut down all year round, often without regard for seasonality in order to maintain continuous production. Summer wood is full of sugars and moisture, an ideal environment for fungi and mold. The choice of trunk section was also important. The most resinous butt section was used for the lower crowns. It was in contact with a moist environment and had to withstand maximum loads. The lighter and more breathable top section was used for the upper crowns. Modern rounding machines remove the strongest protective layer, the sap wood, leaving the soft core. As we have already mentioned, processing logs with an axe sealed the pores, creating a smooth surface. Water rolled off such a surface without being able to soak in. The sanded logs of a modern house absorb water across their entire surface, like a paper napkin. This requires constant painting and varnishing with expensive compounds. But even the best material won't help if the house is cold. In the next chapter, you'll learn why modern insulation materials are inferior to the natural physics of solid wood. In the fight against the extreme cold of the frontier, modern frame houses with a thick layer of cotton wool often lose. The reason lies in the physical concept of thermal inertia, or the heat capacity of a material. Modern insulation does an excellent job of retaining heat inside while the heating source is working. But as soon as the stove goes out, the frame house cools down almost instantly, as its walls have nowhere to store energy. A log house made of solid logs works on a completely different principle, acting as a giant heat accumulator. During the day, when the stove is burning or the sun is shining, the logs absorb thermal energy. At night, when the outside temperature drops to critical levels, the walls begin to release the accumulated heat back into the room. This process smooths out temperature fluctuations, creating a stable microclimate inside. Solid wood heats up slowly, but it also cools down slowly, saving residents during interruptions in the supply of firewood. Even if the fire in the hearth goes out, the walls continue to radiate gentle heat for many hours. In a frame house, thermos, the air cools quickly and people begin to feel cold, even if the thermometer shows an acceptable temperature. This is because cold walls draw heat from the human body by radiation. Pioneers built huge stoves, often made of stone, right in the center of a small log cabin. This stone mass heated up and worked in tandem with the wooden walls as a single heating system. Modern fireplaces are often placed against exterior walls or made of metal for aesthetic reasons. They provide heat while they are burning, but do not create a heat reserve for long winter nights. The thickness of the logs was also important, but it was not the only decisive factor. More important was the ability of the wood to redistribute moisture and heat throughout the entire thickness of the wall. In severe frosts, the dew point shifted inside the logs, but did not cause the surface to get wet. Modern multi-layer walls require vapor barrier, the slightest damage to which leads to the insulation getting wet. Wet mineral wool insulation loses its properties almost completely and becomes a conductor of cold. Wood, on the other hand, retains its thermal insulation properties even when slightly damp. This was critically important in conditions where it was impossible to dry out a house for months. Log houses forgave mistakes in operation that would be fatal for a modern house. The energy efficiency of log houses was based on the laws of nature, not on the chemical industry. It was a system that had been tested for centuries in northern countries and adapted to the conditions of the New World. Understanding how thermal mass works made it possible to survive in minus 40 degrees without central heating. The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about. The location of a house is more important than the house itself. Pioneers never built houses on open hilltops for the sake of a beautiful view, as they do now. They looked for low-lying areas sheltered from prevailing winds by folds in the terrain or groups of trees. Proper orientation of the house to the cardinal points could save up to a third of the firewood for the winter. The blind wall always faced north or the prevailing winds, taking the brunt of the elements. Frontier foundations were radically different from modern concrete strips, which often crack during frost heaving. Log houses were often placed on separate large stones at the corners, leaving space under the house for ventilation. This allowed the house to walk with the ground during seasonal ground movements. The log house functioned as a rigid box that could tilt slightly but never break in half. A modern concrete foundation is a rigid frame that tries to resist the tremendous force of freezing water in the soil. If the force of frost heaving exceeds the strength of the concrete, the foundation bursts, tearing the walls of the house apart. A log house built on stones would simply lift up at one corner and return to its place in the spring. This was the concept of a floating house, ideal for unstable soils. The lower crowns of the log house lying on stones were consumables, and this was provided for in the design. If the lower log rotted after 50 years, the house was jacked up and only one crown was replaced. In a modern house, the destruction of the bottom of the wall or foundation often means the demolition of the entire structure. Repairability was built into the very idea of a log house. The lack of a rigid connection to the ground also prevented capillary moisture absorption from the soil. The stones served as natural waterproofing, cutting off the damp earth from the dry wood. Today, roofing felt and mastics are used, but the slightest mistake in their installation leads to dampness in the house. Trappers used the laws of physics, breaking capillary connections with air gaps. The front door of frontier cabins was often made on the leeward side or protected by a vestibule. Opening the door directly into the living area during a blizzard would cool the house down in seconds. Modern designs with panoramic doors and no vestibules are beautiful but impractical in harsh climates. A small, low door forced people to bow when entering, but it preserved precious heat. Windows were made small and placed on the south side to catch maximum sunlight and heat. There were usually no windows on the north wall at all, so as not to create unnecessary heat loss. Today's trend for huge areas of glazing turns a house into an aquarium that is impossible to heat without gas. Do you think modern builders are willing to sacrifice beauty for such reliability? In the next chapter, we will reveal the secret of breathing walls. The tightness of a log house was ensured not by the perfect fit of the logs, but by the art of caulking the joints. The space between the logs was filled with natural materials, sphagnum moss, tow, or even animal wool. These materials had a unique property. They were hygroscopic, meaning they could absorb and release moisture. The joint acted as a membrane, releasing steam from the house, but not letting wind in. Modern synthetic sealants, warm joints, create a completely airtight film. This seems like a good solution, but it often leads to moisture being trapped inside the logs. The wood begins to rot under a layer of rubber or acrylic, turning into dust invisible to the eye. Moss, on the other hand, acted as a natural antiseptic, suppressing the growth of fungus in the space between the logs. Caulking was not a one-time action, but a regular process of house maintenance. After each winter and shrinkage, the owner would go through with a mallet and a shovel, stuffing new portions of moss into the cracks. This allowed the house to remain perfectly airtight for decades. Modern homeowners want to build and forget, but that doesn't work with wood. Clay mixed with straw or manure was used to fill wide gaps on the outside. This mixture dried to become as hard as stone, but remained vapor permeable. If a piece of clay fell off, it was immediately replaced with fresh mortar, which was always on hand. Repairs were inexpensive and affordable for any member of the community. It was important not to overdo the caulking so as not to lift the logs and break the logs. An experienced craftsman could feel the elasticity of the joint, creating a tight cushion without pushing the wall apart. Excessive filling could cause the logs to hang on the insulation, forming through gaps. Unlike construction foam, which is destroyed by ultraviolet light and crumbles, moss lives for centuries. When dismantling old log houses, moss is often found that has retained its green color and fresh smell. This indicates that an ideal preservative environment was created inside the joint. Foam, on the other hand, is hygroscopic and, when saturated with water, breaks the wood when it freezes. The joint insulation system was adaptive, environmentally friendly, and repairable at any time. It did not fight the nature of the wood, but complemented it, creating a harmonious structure. It was a symbiosis of materials, each of which enhanced the properties of the other. At the center of any reliable log house stood not just a stove, but a massive stone or brick structure. Often, the chimney was built first, and then the wooden walls and roof were erected around it. The stove was not only a source of heat, but also a kind of stiffening rod for the entire house. Even though it did not touch the walls, its heat dried the interior logs, preventing them from rotting and warping. The location of the stove in the center ensured uniform heating of all corners and walls of the room. Warm air circulated in a circle, leaving no stagnant cold areas where mold could appear. In modern homes, radiators are placed under windows, creating thermal curtains, but corners often remain cold and damp. A massive pipe running through the floors and roof also functioned as a heat exchanger. It transferred heat to the attic, drying out the rafter system and ceiling insulation. This prevented condensation and ice dams from forming on the roof, which can damage the roofing. Modern sandwich pipes are insulated and release heat outside. The stone and clay of the stove had enormous heat capacity, as we have already mentioned. But more important was their ability to regulate humidity. The clay absorbed excess moisture from the air when the house was damp and released it when the air was dry. This created a healthy microclimate that was beneficial for human lungs and for the preservation of wood. The foundation for the stove was made independent of the foundation of the walls so that different settlement patterns would not destroy the house. This was a complex engineering solution. Two heavy structures lived their own lives but worked together. A mistake in this joint could lead to cracks in the stove and a fire, the settler's greatest fear. Cooking over an open fire or in an oven also added heat to the house, utilizing 100% of the energy. In summer, to avoid overheating the house, meals were often prepared in outdoor summer kitchens. This seasonal zoning of life helped to maintain comfort and conserve resources. The stove was the heart of the log cabin, its engine and soul. Without it, the house became just a pile of logs, cold and lifeless. It was around the fire that the entire strategy for survival in the winter wilderness was built. The paradox of old log cabins was that they were both warm and incredibly leaky by modern standards. There were no plastic windows or vapor barrier films to turn the dwelling into an airtight package. The natural draft of the stove sucked out huge volumes of air, forcing fresh air to enter through micro cracks and pores in the wood. This constant air exchange prevented moisture from stagnating in the corners. Modern houses suffer from sick building syndrome when carbon dioxide and chemical vapors accumulate inside. The frontier log cabin was ventilated around the clock, even with the windows closed. This meant significant heat loss, but dry air is much easier and faster to heat than humid air. The pioneers heated the street, but preserved the health and integrity of their homes. Moisture is the main enemy of wood, and the best protection against it is air movement. The wind blew freely under the floor, drying the joists and subfloor. Modern vents and foundations are often made too small or closed for the winter, which leads to floor rot within a couple of years. The old masters knew that where there is stagnant air, there will be rot. The attic was always cold and ventilated, serving as a buffer between the warm roof and the street. Snow on such a roof did not melt from the heat of the house, did not turn into ice, and did not tear the roofing material. Today, attics are insulated and made habitable, disrupting this temperature balance and creating problems with condensation. The lack of running water and sewage inside the house also saved the log house from excessive moisture. Laundry, washing, and cooking large amounts of food were often done in separate buildings. In a modern house, the bathroom and kitchen generate liters of steam, which is absorbed into the walls if the ventilation is not adequate. The wood itself acted as a recuperator, partially heating the air entering through the pores with the heat it emitted. This process of gas diffusion through the cellular structure of wood is unique and cannot be reproduced by artificial materials. The log house breathed through the entire surface of the walls, rather than through a single exhaust pipe. Ventilation was not an engineering system of pipes and motors, but a property of the material and construction itself. It was an invisible, silent, and fail-safe life support system for the house. The main difference between a frontier log house and a modern cottage is not the technology, but the builder's philosophy. The pioneer built a house for himself, his children, and his grandchildren, understanding that the life of his family depended on the quality of his work. He was not a hired worker who needed to finish the project quickly and get paid. Every blow of the axe was an investment in his own future. Today's construction industry is focused on speed, low costs, and visual appeal for sales. The service life of modern materials is often limited to a warranty period of 15 to 20 years. Log houses, on the other hand, were built to last for centuries, becoming family homes that accumulated history and extensions. This planning horizon changed the very approach to the choice of components and solutions. Repairability was a key factor. Any element of the house could be replaced or repaired by the owner himself. Modern houses are crammed with hidden communications and complex systems, the repair of which requires specialists and special equipment. Autonomy and independence were the main values on the border of civilization. The aesthetics of a log house were born from its functionality, not the other way around. Beauty was found in powerful proportions, reliable joints, and the texture of living wood. Today, people often imitate this style by sticking fake logs onto frame walls, creating decoration instead of fortitude. But decoration will not save you when a real storm comes. Fear of the elements forced people to respect nature and learn from it, rather than try to conquer it. Humility before the power of wind and snow dictated the low, squat silhouettes of houses that were rooted in the ground. Modern architecture often challenges its surroundings by creating tall, glass and fragile structures. The mistakes of the settlers were written in blood and frozen bodies, and this experience was passed down as sacred knowledge. Knowing how to choose a tree or cut a corner was more important than literacy. The loss of this continuity has led us to make childish mistakes, even with space-age technology at our fingertips. The history of these houses teaches us that true reliability lies in simplicity, understanding materials, and taking responsibility for one's work. Perhaps we should sometimes look back in order to build a reliable future. We have seen that the secret to the survival of frontier log houses lies not in a single magic trick, but in a whole system of knowledge and skills. From choosing the right tree in a winter forest to the ingenious geometry of corner locks, every step was thought out and tested by harsh practice. These houses were living organisms, capable of breathing, moving, and resisting the forces of nature along with their inhabitants. Modern technologies have given us comfort, but often deprived our homes of that primitive reliability and reserve of strength. What other forgotten technologies of the past would you like to explore in future issues? Suggest topics in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories about survival on the frontier.